George King, Senior Wealth Manager at Mosaico Private Wealth.
Emma Dobson, Chair of CISI's Young Professionals Network in London.
Randeep Buttar, Vice Chair of the CISI's FinTech Committee and also founder of Surety.
John Bennett, I'm Master of the Worshipful Company of International Bankers.
Kate Capocci, Associate Director at Evelyn Partners.
So working in financial services today for me is about bringing sort of young people and the next generation forward, collaborating between different departments. I think that the breadth of individuals and jobs and opportunities is very wide in financial services, and kind of bringing that all together.
I would agree with Emma there that the collaboration is a very, very important aspect of it indeed.
So financial services for me, it's a fundamental utility within society. So from my perspective, I would say that being a part of that enables me to actually contribute to a safer ecosystem for clients, and also allow financial services to help propel other initiatives like sustainability.
Working in financial services at the moment is a period of huge systemic changes, which is really quite interesting when you think about sustainability and the role that finance and investment can have in changing the world.
Yeah, I guess for me, working in financial services, because of the niche that I'm in, where I'm working personally with people and their finances and their plans, it's quite personal. It's a very personal, helping people achieve their goals and have peace of mind and so forth. So it's like that, but very direct, very, very impactful. So if I think about concerns in the sector, I think it's shifted. It used to be regulation or sort of macro issues and so forth, and I think more of the concerns in the sector is just that the pace of change. It feels like the pace of change is faster than what the industry is able to keep up with, what regulators are able to keep up with, and that the pace of change is accelerating, and I think becomes a challenge to keep up with.
I think that's a fair comment. So one thing that I think a buzzword you can use is sort of irresponsible innovation. So the idea that you are trying to improve technology and data and access to things, but actually you're not keeping up as a business, or your data is sort of upside down and doesn't quite fit together. So you think that you've made steps forward, but actually you've made things more complicated, and there's opportunities for things to go wrong that you haven't kind of seen.
I think one of the things has concerns me now and has concerned me for a very, very long time, and it really hasn't changed, is the fact that we still don't really operate on a basis where you know your customer very well. The anti-money laundering regulations that I experienced 20 years ago, the challenges that they had are very, very similar to the challenges that we still face. There's still a lot of dirty money, unfortunately, flowing around the City of London, and the politicians are aware of it. I think something really drastic has to be done about it.
So I guess a consistent theme throughout each of our answers seems to be data. Data seems to be the thing that underpins most activities within financial services today, as I'm sure you guys have experienced, whether it's regulation, whether it's compliance, whether it's sustainability and ESG. A lot of the decision-making processes stem from having good quality underlying data. So I think if there's anything that keeps me up at night, it's that. How do you get a handle on it? How do you make sure your data is governed, it's owned, you've got people that are accountable for it, and that ultimately when you're making decisions, you're making them on the basis of good quality data?
Yeah, I think you've explained it better than I explained it.
I think what's keeping me awake at night is the huge changes we're seeing globally that we need to see from governments, we need to see from businesses. We have a current target of limiting global warming to 1.5 degrees, and that is going to require some huge changes, some of which we're not even on the road to yet, some of which we can't even picture or fully form in our minds at the moment, and the financial services has to keep up with that and play its role as well, which I think is incredibly difficult. And we're talking about this pace of change, and that's another one which is moving really, really quickly, and it's really difficult to stay on track with.
You think of the daunting challenges, that is the new one, and I think that feels really daunting. It's funny that the last big daunting challenge was this incursion of tech, and they were going to take over the industry, and the big tech companies were going to, use their access to people and consumers and data to just completely, restructure the industry, and that sort of didn't seem to happen. That seems to be one of the fears and one of the concerns that used to keep us up at night that seems to have receded. Tech is now an ally, a friend, a tool more than a threat, but that's the big new one.
I think I worry about how seriously people are taking the ESG agenda, actually. Are they just sort of trying to put a face on it, really? And are they actually being serious about what they intend to do? Because I think if you are serious, you will set targets, you will try to achieve those targets, and they will be realistic and in a reasonable length of time as well. Because otherwise, you're really blowing the wind, I think.
The greenwashing challenge is definitely a real risk.
Yeah.
And I think what I'm observing from some firms that I work with is that they actually have policies in place which make that in itself a target and a metric that they measure themselves against. Mm-hmm. And I think the regulators do need to catch up with that. I would say one of the other things that also keeps me up at night is probably the proliferation of regulation, which hasn't abated since the financial crisis, right? So, and it gets worse when you go to other jurisdictions. You have regulatory divergence. Not all regulators are singing from the same hymn sheet. The cost of compliance as a result goes up for firms that want to operate sort of in an international environment.
I would think over the next few years, this main skill that we'll need as investors, as people in the financial services, is adaptability and the ways we can work with change, because as we were discussing, there are so many changes coming at us and they're constant, and we just need to be able to work with that and work around that and just constantly learn ourselves.
Allied to that, I think, is this issue of teamwork. There's got to be much collaboration. I think we were talking about collaboration earlier. Much collaboration in the financial services sector. Otherwise, you're not going to be able to progress this. And as you said, regulation is the problem. Is one of the big problems. I think if you can get your teams working together. And not only within the organisation, but with the regulators, you're going to at least try to minimise the problems that arise.
Yeah, agreed. I mean, from my perspective, I would say that one of the key skills that we need to develop in-house as a sector, especially for incumbent employees, is around automation, AI, and machine learning. The skill set of the future is really very much going to be based on robotics, automation. People are going to need to know how to manage these tools, not necessarily become in-depth coders, but actually have the ability to teach these machines how to actually operate while they play more of an overseer role. So that would be my take on the next real phase of development.
I think that ties in well with what Kate said as well in terms of adaptability. It sort of changes from adapting as an industry and as teams, but also in terms of what a role looks like. So actually, if your job starts to become 50% machine-led, then are you having to pick up a different dynamic of extra skills, or what does the human element look like? Do you only work 9 till 3 because the machine does the rest of the work? So you've got to try and find other skills that then make your job and fill your job out. So I think that kind of factors in too in terms of adapting to what a human role looks like when you have machines working alongside you too.
And I think that point about the human element is so important to remember, because the skills that were needed and will be needed will always be about interpersonal behavioral engagement. So it's how we listen to each other, how we hear each other, how we act, whether it's with clients, with peers, whatever and so forth. If we're going to have a lot of change coming, and we're going to have hopefully increasing diversity and inclusion and so forth, the ability to communicate with each other, build teams together better, those interpersonal skills, I think, become even more important, because we're not sort of just doing the same old thing, because we have new tech to deal with, or because we have new challenges to deal with, hopefully diverse people coming into the industry. Those skills are critical. So I guess for people coming into the financial services sector, hopefully the perception of what that is changing. I know, when I came into it a long time ago, It A, seemed quite foreign, B, it seemed sort of all about money. And this conflation of working in finance and it being about money is understandable, but not right. And I think as people sort of, as you were saying earlier, Randy, if people earlier start to, in their career, say, this is about service or problem solving or system building or something else, and finance is a tool for that, I think that's a real perception shift about what it means to come into the financial service industry.
I'd agree. I mean, I came into financial services just on the cusp of the great financial crisis, 2007, 2008, and perception at that time, I think most people would agree, was at an all-time low. Financial services, bankers were seen as fat cats in the industry, there to basically suck the lifeblood out of the community. But actually, I would say now that has changed significantly. And a lot of that has got to do with the proliferation of new technology that allows challenges into the ecosystem as well. So what you're finding is there's a lot more financial services being offered by smaller companies which are nuanced and catering to people in society at multiple different levels. So from my perspective, I think hopefully it's seen as a force for good at the moment, and that's only going to continue.
I think I can go back a little further than that. I think 50 years ago, financial services were regarded as very elitist. There were professions for the graduates and there were jobs for the others. I don't think that exists any longer. I think it's professions and jobs across the board for everybody. You don't have to go to university nowadays to get into the professions. You don't have to have got the right family, if you like, to get on in financial services any longer. It has been a major change over that period of time. 50 years, I know, but it has changed.
More of a meritocracy.
Yes, indeed, yeah.
I would agree with that. I think that is one thing that is helping change perception. I think is actually we are improving diversity within the industry as well, and diversity of people and diversity of background and skills that we hold. And I think that just changes how we come across, because as you were saying, the financial services used to come across very elitist and full of greed and profitability, and it was a certain subset of people, but now we're kind of growing and expanding what it means to be a part of financial services as well.
Yeah, I think the work that I do with the Young Professionals Network with CISI, it's, what you said, George, you kind of come in and you used to believe that banking was being a banker. That was, you were either an astronaut or a banker. That was the options. But actually now you have the grad schemes where you rotate around different departments through compliance, risk, operations, middle office, etc. And graduates that I speak to and that are part of our event programs, they have these sort of extra kind of enriched experiences coming in as young people into the financial services. And I think there's an appreciation then as well for the wider business. You haven't got, it's sort of separate departments working away or apart from each other. The lines of defence are more blurry because everyone collaborates better. And I think that is something that's kind of improving and moving forward too.
Evelyn Partners started supporting the Task Force for Climate-Related Financial Disclosures at the start of this year, and we've also set targets for net zero. I think this is incredibly important given the huge challenges that we as a planet are facing, and any responsible company should be doing the same. But I think it's especially important for the financial services because of the influence we have over how global markets operate, over what businesses are doing and how they're affecting stakeholders. And I think we should take that very, very seriously.
I mean, just to build on that point, which I think is fantastic, the financial services firms, especially those with a big sort of loan book, corporate loan book, as well as retail, they have a role to play in terms of measuring not only themselves and their own carbon footprint, their own emissions, and the impact they're having on the environment and all of those factors, E, S, and G, but also looking at their corporate clients. So, do you continue to do business with firms who have a really bad record in terms of emissions? Is that something that you can actually help influence? And what I'm finding is that a lot of firms are actually starting to influence those discussions by meeting with those clients, asking them, what is your transition plan? How are you going to get from where you are today to net zero by either 2025 or 2030 and beyond? And actually, it's becoming a win-win because they're now starting to develop services that are in line with that. So actually, we can help you on that journey. We can offer you sustainable finance, that sort of thing.
Yeah, I think that net zero is, it's a positive affirmation. It's a mindset. It's a goal. Candidly, it's difficult, right? Because, so someone makes a net zero commitment, and we frankly don't have all of the tools and all of the measurement to sort of map out clearly exactly how you get there. And I think a lot of firms are taking undue criticism for that, as if it's just, a fake announcement as opposed to an actual commitment, just because we don't exactly know all the tools and all the processes that'll get us there. But there's interim steps, right? So my firm is a B Corp. The concept is that you shift the whole purpose of your business to not be about just making money and profit, but you have a multi-stakeholder alignment. So you're working for your clients, you're working for the environment, you're working for customers, staff, as well as profits. That's something you can do now, and that puts you on that direction. I mean, as you know, given the work you do, Kate, the finance industry is already playing a role toward the rest of the world in how allocation of capital is happening around ESG metrics, but we have to look in the mirror and do it ourselves. We have to show the leadership in terms of how we run our own businesses, not just how we allocate capital, and sort of start to realign our own businesses to have a multi-stakeholder engagement, an ESG internal metric, not just how we allocate our capital.
It's like the difference between sort of tick box approach versus the culture of the firms and the industry. You kind of have to change the mindset as a whole rather than just creating policy and procedure and ticking boxes.
I'm not in the financial services industry any longer, but I have been involved in this ESG agenda through my role as an elected member of the City of London Corporation. And the City of London Corporation has an established net zero challenge for 2030. But it's a difficult one to achieve because we have so many partners that we're interacting with, and we've got to ensure that they are going towards that target as well.
They're on the journey with you.
It's incredibly difficult. But this is the objective, and I think if everybody does this, then we're on the right road. I was actively involved in financial services for nearly 40 years and retired from active employment in 2005. But since that time, I've continued to have involvement with the industry through my livery company and through other organisations. And it's a fascinating industry to be in because it is changing all the time. From, as I said earlier, from 50 years ago, you could hardly recognise it because then you communicated through letters, through telexes, if anybody knows what that is now, and through letters. Now it's the internet, electronic devices, and a totally different environment of communications. That's what I feel is really the changes that have been fundamental to the industry and have improved its efficiency beyond measure.
I think the 30th anniversary of the CISI is a useful reminder about the importance of professionalization and training and upskilling and so forth. You think about, the financial industry a couple of decades ago, it was always around, it was always doing stuff, but it clearly is getting better, and you want that to be something that we lead internally and not something that's imposed externally. It's, you want to have the trust of clients and customers. And frankly, finance, like maybe law, are like the two industries that infuse everything else in the world. And so you need to have, some kind of professional bodies that are helping all of us do this better and share information and learn and train and hold ourselves to standards and so forth. So, yeah, it's something to celebrate.
Yeah, for me, I think it's the diversity of both the client side and the people that you're working with. So whether it's sort of young professionals with older or people with older experiences, all sorts of different backgrounds, wealth generation. Like now you're living in a global environment. People could be coming from all over the world into London to to work alongside you. And also they could be your clients and they'll sort of crisscross over on both sides. I think that's a huge part of why being in financial services now and for the next 30 years will continue to be really interesting.
Yeah, it is. I think about the variety of skills and things that you need in order to do this job. And especially we were talking earlier about the human element, and we've got more and more that we can have machines help us out with. But especially where if we're working in wealth management, which I do as myself, you still have to have that relationship with your clients and really understand them, and it can be quite an emotive topic. People sometimes picture finance as cold and hard, but actually when you're working directly with people and it's their life savings or it's their pensions or it's the money they're using to fund their children to go to university, it's being a part of people's lives as well and helping them through that journey.
So from my perspective, I think, yes, I agree. I like the fact that there's diversity across the financial services. There's also this massive confluence of ideas when you get multiple different people from different backgrounds working together, throwing themselves at challenges. For me, it's always been about the challenges, and there's obviously no shortage of challenges in the financial services, right? They continue to grow, and I think that puts you in a very dynamic headspace where you can actually start working on problems, finding solutions, collaborating better. And I think, again, just coming back to your point, what I really like about it is that it absolutely does touch upon pretty much every facet of society. We are the cog in the wheel that helps move things forward, irrespective of what's going on in the world. And I think that in itself is quite fascinating, because then you start feeling like you're a part of something and that you can affect change.
Definitely, and I think we've talked about sort of the role of banking is for bankers, and that's moved. I think I've come across scientists that work in banking because they're part of the ESG side of things in asset management and looking at, it's incredible the backgrounds and experiences, knowledge, just way people bring themselves forward in such a, what should feel like quite a small, we do money, but really it's so much bigger than that now, and we cover so much more.
So CISI for me it's just been a really fantastic experience. I've had the opportunity to give back, I feel, through my years of experience, being able to sort of enter into a body where you have young professionals who want to learn a bit more about your work, which I find quite interesting. But I think at the same time, there's also an opportunity there to do more and learn more yourself as a professional. And so I've been able to do things like run webinars, cover topics like cloud adoption in the financial services, through to the importance of ESG data in terms of investing. And that's exposed me to many professionals who ordinarily I never would have gained access to. So I think from a networking perspective, from enhancing your knowledge about topics around you, it's been really beneficial.
Yeah, quite frankly, for me, I needed this when I joined the industry. My background, my degree was in Spanish, so modern foreign languages. I stumbled into financial services looking for a job in London, so that was the obvious where you end up. But ultimately, I needed the confidence to be able to stand in a financial services firm and feel like I could be shoulder to shoulder with someone who had maybe gone a more traditional route that you would stereotypically expect. And so by completing various qualifications with CISI, ultimately getting the diploma and following that pathway, I really felt strong and kind of able and knowledgeable enough to really talk around my topic, to be confident is the big buzzword, I think, for me. And then being able to take that forward with the work that I do with the Young Professionals Network here, making people realise that being from different backgrounds and not following traditional routes is totally okay, and you can be successful and move forward without fitting in boxes.
Yeah, like you, I guess I sort of needed it too, but in a different way. So I moved here from the States. I'd already had quite a lot of my professional career in the States, and clearly you have the opportunity there to take exams and do things and so forth for sort of basic professional qualifications, but there isn't the sort of the community of CISI there. Mm-hmm. There's something more narrow around CFA if you're a very academic, very narrow part of the financial industry, but there isn't the CISI community for networking, for broad understanding and expression across the financial services industry, upskilling, cross-skilling, et cetera, and so forth, and just getting to know your peers and charting your own career and so forth. So yeah, it's been a very important part of my 15 plus years in the UK.
I suppose I have to say that I'm the grandfather of all this, of this particular group, because I started, I suppose, with CISI or its forerunner as a registered rep. If you remember that, or probably you don't. I was a registered rep for the Securities and Finance Association, and after that, because I had to be. You had to be a registered rep to work in the industry, and particularly in the part of the industry where I was. So I graduated from that to become one of the first members, I think, of the CISI as an associate, and moved up through that through to being, well, now I suppose many of you are fellows of the institute, so it was absolutely vital for me to be part of that organisation, and it's something that I've retained ever since.
And probably vice versa. They appreciate you too, I'm sure.
Maybe, I don't know.
I'm actually much like Emma. I came into financial services with a French degree and moved straight into investment management and specifically wealth. So a lot of what CISI was for me originally was giving me those qualifications and the knowledge that I needed to, take on the responsibility of managing other people's money for them. But I think it's kind of grown more so since then, where I'm able to help share and collaborate. I can come to the CISI and speak about sustainability and climate change and investment, but equally I then learn more, cloud computing, other topics as well. So it's just an ability to continue sharing and upskilling as a group and an industry.